bone. We have the sacral vertebrae, that's the lower abdomen bone. Then we have the cauda, that's the tailbone. So 5: cervical, neck; thoracic, chest; lumbar, upper abdomen; sacral, lower abdomen; then cauda, that's the tail. So we'll be looking at the characteristics of these bones, of these various vertebrae: the cervical, thoracic, lumbar, sacral, and cauda. But before then, to characterize or differentiate between these vertebrae, we have to look at some general characteristics. So when we are mentioning them in comparing or differentiating the vertebrae, you will not be confused. And they include the following: the structure of a typical vertebra. We have the centrum. The centrum is a solid piece of bone from which a circular neural arc arises, forming a neural canal. The centrum is a solid piece of bone from which a circular neural arc arises, which forms a neural canal. A neural canal is a space for the passage of the spinal cord. So the space through which the spinal cord passes is called the neural canal. Then the neural arc is the one that surrounds the neural canal. Then we have what we call the neural spine. The neural spine is the backward and forward projection from the top of the neural arc for attachments of muscles. The upward and backward projection from the top of the neural arc for attachment of muscle. That is what is called the neural spine. Then for the transverse process, it is the projection from sides of the neural arc, providing surface for the attachment of muscles and ligaments. Also, we have the Cytophosis. This is the small articular they are the small articular surfaces for the articulation of successive vertebrae. So, you know, these vertebrae, I mentioned 5 sides. So, the Cytophosis are the smooth articular surfaces for the articulation of successive vertebrae, that is for the joining of the vertebrae that follows. Then it is divided into 2 parts. We have the pre-Cytophosis, then we have the posterior Cytophosis. The pre-Cytophosis is the one that faces inwards and upward, while posterior Cytophosis is the one that faces outwards and downward. Now, I will now be talking about the distinguishing features of the vertebrae using the terms I've defined earlier. So the first is the cervical vertebrae. The cervical vertebrae has small centrum. It has a short neural spine. Then cervical ribs are present. That's a flattened transverse process. It has large neural canal. Then it has vertebral canal. That is 2 openings through which blood vessels of the neck pass through. You know, I said cervical vertebra is the bone of the neck. So, but it has vertebral canals, 2 openings which blood vessels of the neck pass through. Then, the cervical vertebra provides protection for the spinal cord. The first 2 cervical vertebrae are the atlas and the axis. Those are the popular ones because they are the first 2. Atlas, then axis. The atlas is the first cervical vertebrae. It has no centrum. It has large neural canal. It has strong, broad, and flat transverse process through which the muscles of the head are anchored. It has reduced and small neural spine. Then it has 2 large hollow faces for articulation with occipital condyles on the base of the skull, which permits the nodding movement of the head. So that is the characteristics of atlas. Then the second one is the axis. The axis is the second cervical vertebrae. It is broad and has flat centrum. It has large neural spine, then a small transverse process. It has flat cervical ribs. Then it has 2 post-Cytophosis and no pre-Cytophosis. 2 post-Cytophosis, no pre-Cytophosis. Then it has odontoid process. That's the axis now. It has odontoid process that fits into the neura of the atlas. You know, I said they are in succession. So you have the atlas first, then the axis follows. So it is the odontoid process that fits into the neura of the atlas, which is the first one. So they both allow free rotation movement of the head. So it's the atlas and the axis on top of each other. The atlas was then the axis that allows your neck to move in the rotational movement. Then that is for the cervical vertebra. We now talk about the thoracic vertebra. It has large cylindrical centrum, large neural canal, and neural arc. It has demifacets on each side for articulation with the rib. It has demifacets on both sides for articulation with the rib. That's for the thoracic vertebra. Then for the lumbar vertebra has large and thick centrum. It has short and flat neural spine projecting upward and forward. It also has high neural arc with several projections, which provide a firm but flexible structure for bending the neck. It also has well-developed pre- and post-cytophosis. For the lumbar vertebra has long and stout transverse process which points forward and downward. It has two extra paired projections, that is the anaphosis and metapophosis, for attachment of the abdominal muscle. It supports most of the body waist. The sacral vertebra is fused to each other to form the sacrum, which articulates with the pelvic gaddu. Then it has bones, large centrum, reduced neural spine. Then the transverse process of first sacral vertebrae is large and attached to the upper part of the pelvic gaddu. It has narrow neural canal. That's for the sacral vertebrae. Then the last one is the Codabatibidasi, that's the tailbone. The entire bone consists of the centrum. The entire bone of the Codabatibidasi consists of the centrum. So it doesn't have neural canal, it doesn't have neural arc, it doesn't have neural spine or transverse process. So it's majorly made up of the centrum. Then in man, the Codabatibidasi are 4, which are fused together to form what we call coccyx. Then in rabbits, there are about 16 and they are not fused together. Then rats have between 27 and 30 vertebrae. So that is that about the Codabatibidasi. Just telling you that it's just made up of centrum, no neural arc, no neural canal, no neural spine, no transverse process. Then in man it is 4 vertebrae fused together called coccyx. In rabbits it is 16 but it's not fused together. In rabbits it's about 27 to 30 vertebrae. Now we move to talk about the appendicular skeleton, which is the second main group of skeleton that we have in mammals. We said the mammalian and the skeleton is divided into two, the axial skeleton and the appendicular skeleton. We've talked about the axial skeleton. Now we want to talk about the appendicular skeleton. The appendicular skeleton, like I said earlier, consists of the pectoral gaddu, the pelvic gaddus, the limb gaddus, that is the hind limbs and the forelimbs. So we'll be talking in details about all these gaddus that we have mentioned. So first we talk about the pectoral gaddu. The pectoral gaddu consists of the large flat scapula, which is also called the shoulder blade. Then it also consists of the collarbone anteriorly, the collarbone, then the coracoid process, which is projecting from the scapula. Now the pelvic gaddu. The pelvic gaddu consists of 3 bones that are fused together and firmly fastened to the sacral vertebra for rigid support of the hind limb. The 3 bones that are fused together firmly to the sacral vertebra, that is the lower abdomen, for rigid support to the hind limbs, that is to the legs. That is what the pelvic gaddu is all about. And these 3 bones are the dorsal ilium. The dorsal ilium is attached to the gaddu, to the sacral vertebra. Then it accounts for the width of the hips. Then the anterior pubis And the last one is the posterior ischium, that's the one at the back, the anterior pubis, then the posterior ischium. The weight of the body falls on the posterior ischium when you sit down, because it's at the back of the body. Then, still talking about the pelvic gaddu, we have what we call the obturator foramen. This consists of the large hole between the pubis and the ischium. The pubis and the ischium, the pubis to the front and the ischium to the back. The large hole there. Then the nerves and the blood vessels and muscles passes through the obturator foramen. Also, the pubic symphysis is the joint of the left and the right halves. The joint of the left and the right halves of the gaddus. That's what is called the pubic symphysis. Also, we have what we call the acetabulum. That's the hollow which the hind bones fit in. The hollow, there is a hollow around this place, around your hip or the pelvic, that the hind bone, that is the leg bone, fits into. That is what is called the acetabulum. So we talk now about the limb bones, the fore and the hind limbs. The limb bones are basically built on the pentadactyl pattern. That is the 5-digit pattern. That's what is called pentadactyl. The 5-digit pattern. You know, the hands, the fingers are 5, the toes also are 5. So we have the forelimbs and the hind limbs. I've mentioned that earlier. So the forelimbs now, the forelimbs consist of the humerus, the upper part of the arm, the ulna and the radius. There are 2 bones at this lower part of the arm. So that's what we call the radius and the ulna. Then we have the carpals, the metacarpals, and the phalanges. Those are the components of the forelimbs. We'll talk more about that. Then we have the hind limb. The hind limb, that is the leg, consisting of the femur, the tibia, and the fibula. That's the lower part of the legs. The other 2 bones that we have, just like we have in the hand, the radius and the ulna. So we have the tibia and the fibula.